Okay, so welcome back everybody. We are talking about sewing patterns still. We're talking about them again. And the purpose of today's video is really to show you the potential that is in selling sewing patterns. I do want to say right out that yes, the majority of sewing patterns that you come across might not even be worth selling, at least not individually. And the majority of the patterns I sell are what I would consider just bread and butter, anywhere from $10 to $20. And that's really kind of the price point I focus on. Just like in any other subject in reselling, it's always fun to find those outliers, right? To find those hidden gems. And that's just been so much fun for me with selling sewing patterns, is to try to figure out what are the trends, what are people looking for, what's considered super rare. Sometimes it's even totally not what you would expect or what you would pinpoint. So I'm going to show you in this video we're going to go through some of my sales on Etsy, my best sales in my Etsy pattern shop. I have had some good eBay sales, and I pulled out I'll talk about some of the ones that I remember from eBay. eBay was a lot of my bread and butter. I sold a lot of Vogue patterns on eBay. It seemed to do pretty well there. And I'll kind of give you just kind of an overview. Not every single really good pattern that I sold, because otherwise we'd be here all night. But we will just start off with this one. This was at the top of my list for in my solds, the highest price. My shop on Etsy is called Pish Posh Notions. And this was an American Designers, it's what it's called, right? So it's not even a Vogue. It's not even one of those top 4 pattern companies that we talked about in the last video. But the key on this one was Claire McCardle. And I don't know a ton. I think maybe I said in the first video, I've been in some pattern groups on Facebook. I kind of see what gets the collectors excited. I've sold in groups on Facebook, and I can see the patterns that they kind of clamor over or kind of fight over. And the name Claire McCardle comes up quite a bit. So it's definitely a name to look out for. I don't know if her stuff would only be under this American Designers. It's definitely all going to be vintage. So this is an example of how condition doesn't even, it does not have to be pristine in order to sell well. So this dress pattern was from 1950. The top 2 pieces are the envelope. They were completely separated into 2 different pieces. But it had the instructions, and then this is what I was describing in that other video about an unprinted pattern. And so there's no lines. You didn't cut out the pieces. It's just tissue paper with they would label each piece with a letter, and that letter was punched out, perforated into the tissue paper to find it. So I did determine that the pattern was complete, and I talked about how to do that in the first video. Anyway, this sold for $75. So as we go through some of these solds or good sales that I've had, it's been interesting to see some patterns probably could sell for more these days. I don't have these these aren't in a time order, so I don't know how many years ago exactly some of these were. But then some patterns will also depreciated. So I got a good price, but they're not selling at that price anymore. So that's been kind of interesting to see too. It's like anything we resell. Certain things stay really popular for a while, and then it kind of drops down a little bit. Okay, so let's look at another one. This is Vogue. Okay, so Vogue Couturier. That's such a hard word to say. It's an older 1955 sewing pattern. It was also unprinted, and it sold for $74, but it was complete. It was a size 16, which was a fairly good size. And yeah, so I ended up skipping over, once I show you a few of these larger envelope Vogue pattern sales, I kind of skipped over those because that's basically where my best sales were, consistently with the large envelope designer vintage Vogue pattern. So this is just an example of that. Next one. Here's another example. Vogue Americana. It's Oscar de la Renta. Just a cute little dress. I think this was from the 60s, 70s, sorry. And that one sold for $74. I'll tell you where I got some of these. I think we'll have another video and we'll talk about sourcing a little bit, but this was one of those situations where I think, because I used to have a blog, and in my blog I wrote about selling sewing patterns, kind of like these videos that I'm making. People would reach out to me and say they'd come across my blog because they wanted to sell their sewing patterns. And so a couple times people offered, if I wanted to buy their collection outright. So this first woman, I was first giving her advice on how to sell them. And we emailed back and forth for a little while. And then finally she just said if I wanted to make an offer, I could. And so I made an offer, I negotiated with her, and I ended up getting, she had quite a few of these large envelope Vogue patterns, and they have done very, very well. So that's how I sourced this, like a lot of these. I'm pretty sure this one came from her. So $74 for this little cocktail dress. Next one. Okay, so this is something to also keep an eye out for. Lutterlow, the Lutterlow system, and really I've sold a few different systems, over the years. So it's not so much a pattern, it's a system for sewing. I don't know necessarily, maybe they don't need patterns, or anyway. Can you tell I don't sew? Anyway, this is just, it's a very popular pattern drafting. That's what it is. You can draft your own patterns. So that makes more sense. And it would be based more on your own measurements, and whoever you're making it for, you can customize it quite a bit. So that's why that's popular. This was an older one from the 80s, printed in West Germany, but it was complete. It had the ruler, all these other different little things that came with it. So that sold for $65. And if you take a look at eBay and look at this Lutterlow system, okay, you can see some of the prices. $115.99. These were best offer accepted. Here's one, looks like kind of like mine, $100, except theirs has a CD or DVD or something. Here's a few more. So yeah, they're all quite up there. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for when you're out looking for sewing patterns, because these should be right there in the craft section as well. I did sell some other Lutterlow brochures or booklets later on in my reselling. I don't think we talk about them again later, but anyway, it's a good name to be on the lookout for. Okay, speaking of names, when we talk about the Vogue large envelope patterns, Issey Miyake as a designer is always the top selling designer. We'll see that. We're going to look at some other Vogue patterns later. So Issey Miyake, this was a coat. It sold for $65. Now, I know where I got these because of the way it was organized, written on here, 11th box. That's got nothing to do with me. I bought a lot of patterns on Mercari to resell, and I bought the lot, and then I usually would just buy the lot, and then I would just sell them individually. It's just a way to source some good patterns. And the seller reached out to me and said they were moving, and they had all these patterns that they had sourced from, I think an estate sale or something like that. The husband, his wife was a seamstress. The husband was just kind of overwhelmed. She felt bad because he was just going to get rid of everything. So she took them all and was trying to slowly sell them on Mercari. And she was doing lots and everything. But she's like, she got overwhelmed and just said, you know, if you want to make a deal, we can make a deal. So I was buying all these Vogue patterns from like the 90s from her. And then she ran across me like later in a Facebook vintage group, and she's like, oh, I didn't know you liked vintage patterns too. And so she sold me the vintage patterns that this woman had. So I ended up with, this is why I have backlogs. I can't even show you my patterns right now that are not yet listed because they're in the garage. And my husband's got some stuff leaning up against, like big sheets of heavy things are leaning up against that row of shelves. Otherwise, I would show you. I would bear my shame to you all. But I've got money sitting in my garage. So I'll chip away at it slowly but surely. Okay. $65 Issey Miyake. If you see that name, just buy it. It's good. It's a good one. Okay, this is something else I wanted to show you. Vogue. Okay, so Paris Originals are generally going to be good. This one was uncut, size 14. Now, if you look at this little thing right here, so a lot of the older Vogue large envelope, sometimes some of the smaller ones, they would come, if the person buying the pattern remembered to do it, or the person selling the pattern at the pattern shop remembered to do it, you could get a sew-in label to put in your finished piece of clothing. And not every person took one, and not every, they didn't always give them out or whatever. So every once in a while, if you find these patterns and you look carefully through, because they sometimes get tucked into folds, you can find some of these little labels. So I have a couple. Here's one. It's called Vogue Special Design. And then it's another Vogue Special Design. I don't remember where I picked these up. I think they might have just been in somebody's, they were either extra in somebody's sewing pattern, or it was just in somebody's sewing Notion box or something like that. But I haven't had any special design patterns lately to be able to match these up and add them in. But if you have the label, you should mention it definitely in the listing. And I made sure in these to put it in the first picture so that they could see that that label was included. So that's kind of fun. Let me see if it shows it on the back. Yep, see down here? On the back of the pattern, it'll tell you whether there might be a label inside or not. Or, and it says under that, make sure to ask your salesperson for the label. Okay, so that one sold for $65. That Vogue Paris Original, this font and that color usually stands out pretty quickly when you're looking at patterns. Next is another Vogue Paris Original. I just wanted to show you, it was another one that had the label in it. And that was Christian Dior. Nice little wedding dress or regular dress, and $65 for that one. And that one I put right in the title, uncut with label. And then I switched over. I wanted to show you a more current Vogue pattern that, the big envelope, vintage Vogues, kind of a no-brainer. Some will sell better than others. This is very modern looking, and I don't even remember the age on it or whatever. But what's interesting about this, not every Claire Schaefer custom couture pattern sells this well. I think I remember what happened with this one was that this dress was just really hard to find. So I just put a high price on it. I put $57. Now, if you look over at eBay for, you know, and we're looking at eBay solds. I just want to say the last 3 months, I mean, we could be going into WorthPoint, all that kind of stuff. Or even a couple of them I looked at on Terapeak to check the last 2 years, because generally my sewing pattern sales do better in the fall, winter. Okay, people are at home a little bit more. So we're looking at the last couple months. So this might not be giving us the best, you know, indication of some of the prices. Like I said, this video is just to kind of give you an overview. There's definitely more research you can do on your own. But if you look, this is, I'm doing highest to lowest, and the highest is somewhere under $39. This one was $29. These blazers, definitely the blazers seem to do okay. So I'm not sneezing. I would sell a pattern for $25, not a problem. It's just in the past there have been Claire Schaefer patterns that I know for sure sell a lot higher. So they've either come down, or those particular ones are not listed at the moment. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, my dress, I don't even see it in here. So, you know, getting $57 for that dress, you know, it can't hurt to try, right? And it worked. So I don't remember. This was several years ago, so I don't remember if I found a comp or if I didn't, so I just went ahead and priced high. It's a very pretty dress. Okay. Moving on to a different type of category, a different type of pattern is a costume, Renaissance. I just want to say that not all costume or Renaissance costume patterns are going to be great. So just because you see costume patterns, don't get super excited. This one is going to be a little unusual because it's men's. It sold for $52. It's a Renaissance, you know, style pattern. And a lot of it will just depend on how many are out there, how many are that you see available listed, and that's going to help you figure out your price on that. Okay, so that one ended up being $52. There's another fun costume one, Star Trek, and that one's actually branded. A lot of times you'll see costume patterns that are suggestive of a certain TV show or cartoon character or something, but they're not like officially licensed. Star Trek sold for $50. And then here's another nice one. It's a nightgown, but it's called the Vintage Closet. It's a Victorian style. So it can be, it's cosplay, you know, there's a lot of things that kind of fall into play here. Now I got $50 for this, so I am going to check over on eBay and see what they're doing now. There's 6 results for this pattern. We're at 35, 20, 40, 25, 18. So it's still a good pickup. And I will say I generally do get better prices on Etsy than I see sometimes on eBay. Although I learned something new as we keep going in the video. I learned quite a few things doing this research, and it's been a lot of fun. But anyway, there are instances where you can get more on eBay, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so going back to my shop, another high price sale, $47. So I just wanted to show that there was an Advance pattern company that sold for a good amount. This was a very, very, very classic 50s. But what I had noticed about it, so sometimes I know to price something a little bit higher. Again, it's like hanging out with the sewing pattern people, right? And the people who are into vintage and who collect the vintage sewing pattern. Like someone will share in one of the groups, they'll share a sewing pattern, and people go, oh, look at that neckline. look at those scallops, right? And so I kind of file that away, right? So I see this pattern. It's got scalloped neckline, right? Ruche sleeves, different things like that. And I just kind of filed it away, and I thought, you know what? I bet this will be popular. But then you got to combine it with, you know, are there others available? Or do you have the only one that's going to be listed, or so on and so forth? Condition, all that kind of thing. So I got $47 for this. It's a very beautiful pattern, and actually the envelope is in really good condition. Now let's talk gunny sacks. Okay, so like I said in the first video, looking at trends out in fashion is also going to translate into how well a pattern is going to sell. So the gunny sacks dresses, especially in the last couple of years, they're coming down a little bit. But the gunny sacks dresses from the 70s, they fit that boho cottagecore look that's super popular. So the dresses that are already made up that people bought at stores are, you know, selling in the hundreds of dollars for some of them. And then the patterns were also, like, every time I would list one, I could push it a little higher and a little higher. So this was the highest I ever got with a gunny sacks dress. I think when the dresses were at their peak, I wasn't finding. It was harder. It was getting harder to find the patterns too. So this one was $47 is what I sold it for. And if we take a look at eBay now, they're still doing pretty well. Okay. So they're still $50, $50. That particular style seems popular. It's like a sundress. You know, anything that's very romantic, prairie looking is gonna, you know, get the best price for you. But some of these gunny sacks patterns that are selling for $45, I sold for like $25 a couple years ago, right? So, you know, there's not many more that are that far above 50, but still, okay. I probably could have gotten more, you know, on some of those patterns, but that's just the name of the game. That's just, you know, timing and everything. Okay, and then another example of just kind of a rare pattern, throw a price on it. I don't remember that I could find comps on this one. $45 for a men's boxer brief pattern from the 1930s, like totally random, so, but just kind of cool. And it was complete and all that. And so we got a good price for it. The collectors are out there. Then I just wanted to show, here's another one from that big group of like 90s Vogue that I got. So it's not just the 50s, the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that sell super well. Sometimes it's closer to now, right? So 90s, 2000s, Y2K, those are selling as well. So this one sold for $42. Donna, so it's DKNY basically. And then we go back, another old one, 1939, really awesome dress, house coat, or an evening thing. And it was cut, but it was complete. So you can see I put that in the title, right? It was already cut, it was used, but I checked all the pieces and made sure. And for $42, it was worth my time to do that. Another costume, you know, kind of double check again for men's costumes. Sometimes can do better than the women's, or just harder to find. So Phantom of the Opera, here's an example. It doesn't say Phantom of the Opera anywhere on it. Etsy, you can get away with stuff like that a little bit more, so I went ahead and put that in my title. Because he's wearing a mask for, you know, anyway. Okay. Now talking about a pattern that doesn't look like anything. This is one to keep an eye out for. Simplicity 5461. It's a teddy bear pattern. I kind of try to remember it from the vests, the little vests that they're wearing. Because the designer is Elaine Heigl. And she's got other bear sewing patterns, but for some reason this is the one that sells really well. So it's sold for $40. I think I've only found it this once, maybe twice. I don't remember. Not an easy pattern to find, which is why it sells for a little bit more. $40 for that one. Again, this is what I was talking about, looking at trends that are happening right now. Y2K, little slip dresses are something I hear about in like reselling groups as far as sourcing. You know, looking at actual dresses, if you see these little slip dresses, or even girls today were wearing, you know, they're wearing like lingerie slips as dresses, and it's a trend that's happening, right? So when I came across in my bins of patterns, when I came across this Calvin Klein, it's exactly what people are looking for right now. And so I listed it for $40 and it sold. And here's another good one to keep an eye out, a bolo pattern, Simplicity 4559. It sold for $40 as well. Just double checking. I had taken some notes of just a few things I wanted to not forget to mention, but I think I'm good. So yeah, Hawaiian, this is popular for Viva Las Vegas, things like that. Anyway, I've sold this one a couple times. One time I got the pattern had some damage, the envelope had some damage, and so I sold it for like $35. But $40, $50 is about where you can probably sell that one. Another costume pattern, Fashion Historian. Those generally, that is Simplicity Fashion Historian. There's a lot of like Civil War era type dresses, so good for reenactments, things like that, and they generally tend to do pretty well. This one sold for $38, and I've sold this one a couple times. Then I just wanted to give an example of a mail order pattern. So another large sourcing I did, which is really why my pattern lot doubled in size probably, was I was selling antique patterns on Ruby Lane. And a person found me on Ruby Lane. So all these different ways people have found me and contacted me. Who knows? Maybe these YouTube videos, people will be like, hey, do you want to buy my patterns? But they also, she reached out and she basically had a collection she just was done with. And I think she had some from her family, but she had also bought things, you know, I found receipts from eBay among all the patterns. So she just was done collecting and wanted to clear some things out. And I ended up buying, it was like several boxes, you know, they got mailed to me. And, you know, so I had to pay shipping on top of what she was asking. But she has some very rare patterns in there, and I'm still working my way through it. Actually, I can show you. As I was doing research for this video, I kept coming across things. I was like, no way, I wonder if I have one of those. And so I just did a quick look in one little spot where I knew I could get to. And I found some interesting things. But in her collection, you know, that she gave me that I purchased, she had some antique patterns. I've sold a few. This was a mail order. She had a nice collection of mail order patterns, which is generally I don't get too excited about. Not from the ones that are like from like 60s, 70s. You tend to find those a lot. They sell like so-so. But she had a bunch from like the 30s and 40s. And a lot of them, this was the key, were plus sizes, okay? And that's why they've been selling so well for me. This was probably the top priced one. It was a size 20. You see, I used the keyword voluptuous. It's a thing, okay? 1936, a day dress, okay? And in the next video, I'll talk about how I figured out the year of this pattern because it's not printed anywhere on it. And it was factory folded, so that was another thing in its favor. And I'm thinking, I don't even think I had an envelope or anything. I didn't have the mailing envelope. This was just it. But it was kind of unusual that it had a photograph on the front instead of a line drawing. So there was a few different things that were very unusual about this pattern. $38 for a mail order. But anyway, as I was digging, I came across, hopefully you can see that. I know you're not going to be able to see details, but you can see their antique patterns. Okay. So that was kind of fun. I knew I had them, but they're not in the greatest shape. So it's going to take me a while to like confirm all the pieces are there and all that kind of stuff. So I just pulled them out again because maybe I'll do that soon. So that was where I sourced those, and this mail order pattern came from that. And I've actually sold quite a few of the mail order plus size patterns, anywhere from $20 to $38. Okay, then I just wanted to share just another one. This was $37. Not every dog or cat or pet accessory pattern is going to be great, but some are really good. And, like I said in the first video, there's a barcode. If you're not sure, if you don't want to end up with a bunch of patterns that are only going to sell for 99 cents, just go to eBay, hit the barcode search thingy, and give it a hit and see what kind of prices come up. So these were little dog bed type things. $37. And then this was an interesting this was interesting. Okay, so Simplicity 8177. It's a vacuum cleaner cover. They're actually quite frightening. I don't think I would want this standing in the corner of my house. But anyway, my taste is not important. So $37. Now, if you look at eBay right now, at the solds, the highest one that sold was less than 14, and then like $10 and less, right? So I'm like, man, did the prices really go down that much? Or do people just not know, and then they're just pricing at like $10 like they would any other craft pattern? So I went to Terapeak on eBay. If you go up here on your seller hub under research, you can get to Terapeak. And I put in Simplicity 8177 vacuum. I added vacuum because pattern companies reuse the numbers. So the number 8177 won't be just for that vacuum cover pattern, but other stuff will come up too. And the average sold price is $10.71, but if you look, there's like peaks and valleys all over the place for the past 2 years. So if you look at the top prices, $26.99, $25, $24, and those were in like a year ago, 2021, 2022. So about a year ago, right? So yeah, maybe it's dropped suddenly. Maybe people just don't know to ask. I don't know. Right now, if you go to Etsy, where generally I can get better prices for my patterns, there's only 3 listed right now. And one of them's mine. I have another one, and I have mine at 30 right now. 32 and 37. Okay, so we'll see. I mean, mine's been listed for a little bit, but patterns don't always sell right away. So we'll see. We may be dropping our prices just because the interest is gone. I don't know. Next one is another Renaissance, $37. Again, men's costume. Can do pretty well. And then this was an interesting one as well. So Simplicity 7481. I think there was another number it was printed under. Now, among the pattern sellers, this one was always kind of famous because you would never expect it to sell that well, right? It's an apron. It's just a wrap apron by Daisy Kingdom. For some reason, this was the hottest thing for a few years. Now, I have sold this pattern before. One point I could sell it for $75. And I might have sold it a couple times on Amazon. You know, sometimes on Amazon you can get higher prices too. But I think at least once on eBay I sold it for $75. So the last time I sold this, I sold it for $35. And if you look at prices now, that's about right. Okay, $38, $28, $29, $32, $25. And there's plenty, you know, that have sold for less than that, okay? It's still one I would keep an eye out for sure, especially if it's uncut. I would take $25, $35 any day for a sewing pattern. But I just think it's interesting. It's one of those ones that you kind of see the fluctuation. For a short time there, it was hot. And then this one, if you've watched my channel any length of time, I've sold this one this spring a few times, and right around the $30 mark is what this Country Rabbits pattern goes for. It's McCall's 3760 Country Rabbits, and it just does. It sells $30. So then if we just look at my shop, you can see these are my solds, and I have them high to low, and you can see some of the ones I've shown you, but I just wanted to give you the realistic view of it. Okay, here's some more, a bunch of Issey Miyake, Issey all over the place. Okay, did I not show that one? It's another pattern sale. It's Aladdin. It's a Butterick 3048 right here, and I sold it for $45 once on eBay, and then I sold it for $50 here. So I might have that in one of my next slides, but we'll see. And anyway, so what I wanted to show you is I showed you some of these high price ones. Okay, right here is my first page. So I have 33 pages of solds. And very quickly, on the second page, you know, we're in the $40 range. Okay, and then by page 3, we're in the $30 range. Okay, so that's only like 2 or 3 pages of my solds, and now we're getting into like more bread and butter, into like the $25 range, especially down here, $29, right, for these. So yes, there are some really amazing standouts in the sewing pattern world. I haven't found all of them, but there are mostly going to be average sales, and then a bunch of stuff that's just not worth selling. So, but what I would say is, if you come across, I mean, I should talk about this later. I think I'll talk about it in the next video. Just, you know, you might not want to sell patterns individually, but you might come across a whole big lot of patterns somewhere, and this might be overwhelming. So just sell the lot, and actually you do pretty well. Okay. You could sell it to someone like me who doesn't need them at all. Okay, so now what I did is I went over to eBay, and we're just going to look at solds, you know, not my sales, but just what's out there. Like I said, the last 90 days. Something else I wanted to mention. So my search is Vogue pattern, and then I did minus lots. So we don't want to see the lots that have sold, because those will be high prices, but that's not what we're talking about today. The other thing I could have extracted from this search was book, but I wanted to show you the prices that you can get if you come across some pattern catalog counter books, right? So if you would go to the fabric store or wherever they sold patterns, and on the counter, you could look through the book of patterns and pick out the one you wanted, and then they'd probably get it for you or something like that. Anyway, these counter books sell for good money, especially the older the better. So here we go. It got bid up to $462. And then here we go with our Issey Miyake. That's what we're going to be seeing. $300, and that is auction. Okay, craziness. More pattern books, and then here's our first Vogue Paris original, auction, up to $214. So this isn't the only example of an auction, and that's something I was going to mention, is that I feel like maybe I've been missing out on some auctioning that I could have been doing. And so since I do have some rare patterns still socked away, I think I'm going to experiment with auctions a little bit more. You know, I just think it would be interesting to see what happens. And a lot of the people, I looked at starting bids on some of these auctions, and they were $9.99 or $5. So I'm sure they didn't even expect that the pattern would go as high as it did. Okay, so 10 bids, people were fighting over these patterns. So I wouldn't say auction all your sewing patterns. I would say if you've come across something you think is unique, you can't find many others, then maybe it's something to consider auctioning. So I think I might play around with that a little bit. Okay, more pattern books. Here's another vintage Paris, Schiaparelli. I don't know how to say that. 1953, but that I do know that's a big name, a big designer, also in jewelry, in the jewelry world. $175 for that. Another Issey Miyake, and another, some Vogue magazines. Pattern lot snuck in there, more Issey Miyake. Here's another Vogue Couturier, kind of like I had, but what was my top one? 65? No, 85? Whatever. But see, the auction, here's mine. Here's mine. Mine's not too much different, right? $74. And they got 115 because they ran an auction, maybe. Okay. Issey Miyake. I told you would see him. Okay, Givenchy designer, and they're throwing the word Alexander McQueen as the designer. Now, I looked it up, and from 1998 to 2002, Vogue and Givenchy worked together, and it was when he was designing for them. So I don't know if that means every pattern between those years is him. I might have missed out on some good keyword opportunities. I don't know. Because I have sold a Givenchy pattern before. So we'll see. I know going forward, another Vogue Special Design. See, that's the label that I had. I don't know that I have any of those. Okay, Vogue Special Design 1950, sold for $100. Now this one's interesting. It's a Vogue Paris original. It's Pierre Cardin. It's just from the 60s. It's a very classic 60s suit. You know, I don't know, Jackie O kind of style. And I've always had a little bit of a harder time selling that style, but for some reason that sold really, really well. Okay, here's another good one, Pucci. Those are always good to look for. The designer is really popular. Someone sold a bunch of 4. Issey Miyake, Vogue. I love these ones with the big letters. I just like that pattern envelope style. Another Vogue Couturier, 95. And more designers. Now this one's interesting. Blouse. This is a pattern. It's an older Vogue pattern. 40s, 50s. And it's just a pattern of different types of sleeves. And it got bid up to $88, and the starting bid was $5. Okay. So, see, I sold that one. That was in my shop. And this was interesting. This one says hard to find. It's, you know, it's not a super old pattern. I don't know the year on this one. But it's backless, kind of halter style dress. And apparently it's hard to find. And it sold for $85. There's another McQueen Givenchy. And more Issey Miyake, another wedding dress. Okay, so you get the idea with Vogue. It takes, you know, there's quite a few in the higher numbers with Vogue large envelopes. Okay. Next up is Simplicity. Same thing. Look at this counter book, 1949. That would be awesome. $537. Here's another one. You can see the prices on those if you happen to come across a pattern counter book. Now we come to my top selling pattern of all time. It was quite a few years ago, but the prices are pretty much the same. Let me see if I can get... Did I do it over here? Yep. Here. This isn't my listing, but mine sold for $145. So this is a Simplicity. It's costume, pattern number 4450. And as you can tell, it is Star Wars. Not licensed. Again, hasn't been a problem. Everyone puts Star Wars in their title. But I remember picking mine up at a thrift store. I was on a trip visiting friends, and it's just so exciting to go into a thrift store that you're not used to, like you've never been to before, and you find their patterns, and they actually have a pattern section. It's so exciting. Anyway, I went through, found this pattern. It was uncut. I paid like $1, I think at the most, and maybe $2. And it sold for $145. Best pattern sale ever. For me. For now. You know, I've got some, who knows, maybe some of these auction ones will, you never know. And then look at this, you can get cabinets from a pattern, like from a fabric store. Every once in a while these turn up. I did come across one for McCall's one time at an antique mall, and it was only $40, so it came home with me. There's that Star Wars again. And then here's another Simplicity. Okay, sorry, this is the one I was talking about. It went up to $102.50. It's just sleeves, and the starting bid was $5. That's exciting. And then you need to know about this one as well. Actually, let me pop a thing open so you can see it closer. I have never found this pattern, even though I've always looked for it. It's Simplicity 2245. The designer is Lisette, L-I-S-E-T-T-E. There are other Lisette patterns. I've come across them that don't sell for hardly anything, $10 or less. But for whatever reason, number 2245, it's just like it's a dress, it's a tunic, pants, this little set, for whatever reason, sells for $100. So, nope, I have not found that one yet. And it's not even that old. It's not, you know, I'm sure it's out of print, but it's not that old. Weddings, Super Mario. Again, follow along with what's happening with movies, reboots, all that kind of thing. These two Super Mario costume patterns sold for $85. And then just like fun, like evening dress by Simplicity. There's that Gunny Sacks. There's another Star Wars. Some vintage Mickey Mouse can sell. There's vintage like 1940s Winnie the Pooh, or 30s even. Some of those can sell really well. And then costumes again. Now this was interesting. Simplicity 2589. Now this is either an instance of pattern values going up or me just being clueless when I listed it, because I sold this Simplicity, you know, Queen Elizabeth 2589 pattern. I've sold it for $25. And now it sells for $60. So I don't know what to say about that. Either it went up because the longer something's out of print and the harder it is to find, then that can happen. Here's another couple interesting ones. A boxing outfit, $60. Some cowboy equestrian show shirts, $58. There's that other pattern again. Elvis. So you get the idea. That's simplicity. That's something, and then we get into gunny sacks area again. So I think we saw that one. There's my famous one. And now we're looking at McCall's. Okay, so we're going to look at this. You'll see McCall's doesn't start off with anything over 100. And that doesn't mean a pattern's never sold for over 100. It just means it hasn't in the last 90 days. So we've got an $80 gorgeous dress from the 50s, it looks like. A little 1940s little kids outfit. Now, I've said I don't sell a lot of kids clothes. I do sell some vintage ones. The ones I've seen that have the highest prices for kids patterns are ones like this. 1940s, 1950s. They're always sunsuits. They're always little play outfits. And there can be some bidding wars that go on over those patterns. So that's just something to keep in mind. This is like mermaid style dress. I have something very similar in my to be listed. And I think I actually tried selling it in the past and it didn't sell. So I don't know. Or I did sell it and now I have another one. That's always possible. But that one sold for $45. And then a completely different style in the 70s, Biba. $42. This is a bag and purse, but it's to hold your pet. And then here we go, talking about trends. These types of pants are totally in style right now. And so the pattern is as well. And now skirt patterns, vintage skirt patterns are really hard to sell. So the fact that they got somewhere in the $30 range for that pattern is very interesting to me. Jumpsuit, aprons, some apron patterns can do really well. Now this was fun. Laura Ashley. Okay, here's a couple. Again, I was doing research for this and okay, that was Butterick. I got reminded of Laura Ashley, and like I said, I went off to my little stash that I could get to, and I came across a Laura Ashley pattern, and I thought, oh my goodness, why don't I have this listed? Like, I was listing Laura Ashley a couple years ago, and when cottagecore was really getting going, and this, I still had one that was factory folded, and so I listed it the other day, and it sold the other day, so I sold it for $25. So that was fun. All because I was researching this video. I made me some money. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, McCall's, you know, anything interesting looking, anything a little bit out of the ordinary. Here's like a really new one. McCall's It's So Simple, a memory bear, sells for $30. I've seen it a couple times. And I'm just trying to double check that there's not another good name I can throw out there for you to remember. Elvis. Now this might have been the Elvis pattern I showed you I had the other day, and I said it sold for $50. So it either has sold for $50 in the past and now it's like a $25 pattern, or I was just totally wrong. I'm not sure. Not sure about that one. But anyway, still $25, not too bad. And Laura Ashley, yeah, there was something I was going to show you, but maybe it's in Butterick. Let's talk about Butterick. We're almost done. If you're all still here with me, actually, if you're still watching at this point, leave me a comment. I'm just kind of curious how long people make it through these videos. Okay, Butterick. Now this is fun. Again, let me get up to the top. So Butterick goes back a while. There's a lot of antique Butterick patterns, and so we can see that this antique one sold for $157. McCall's goes back too, but there maybe just hasn't been many offered. Another Butterick, and that's that lot. Other antique Butterick. Here's some more pattern books. Okay, now this is fun. Look at this one. So I was doing research for this video. True Vintage Original, Butterick 6015. One-piece wrap dress. That's called a walk-away dress. Now, I was looking at it, and I was like, why is it called a walk-away dress? So I looked it up. And it's called a walk-away because it was supposed to be so simple, so easy to make. You can see, I don't know if you can see down there, but it's like one big pattern piece that you would just cut. And the idea was you could start it after breakfast and walk away in it by lunchtime because it was so fast to make. So it was called a walk-away dress. Now, I keep looking at that pattern and I'm like, man, that looks really familiar. Like, I feel like I've had it in the past, but I checked solds and I've never sold it. And I'm like, man, maybe it's just in my patterns, you know? So I looked in where I knew I had some patterns organized that were unsold. And I looked through those, and that's where I found the Laura Ashley's, right? Or the Laura Ashley. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe it just looks like one that I've had in the past. And so I kept looking, and it comes up again further down. So then I had my husband get down a box because I wanted to look at when I bought the collection from the lady, some of her collection were in these big 3-ring binders in like sheet protectors, and I knew she had a bunch of her mail order patterns in there, and I just was curious. Yeah, I just wanted to poke through them again and see what more ones I could pull out to sell. And I opened the first binder, and look what I find. Isn't that exciting? I'm so excited. Now, the thing is, do I put it up for auction? Because I don't think there's any listed right now. Or do I just throw it in my Etsy shop for like $75 and see what happens? What do you think I should do? I should say I'm going on vacation next week, I think. I mean, we're supposed to. My husband's sick. So I don't know if that's going to end up messing up our plans. But anyway, I can't run any auctions like right at the moment because we might be gone. But let me know what you think I should do. Should I auction that one, or should I throw it in there at a set price? We'll see. Okay, some more like 1930s Butterick. They seem to do really well as well. Might be, there's that walk-away. So it does have two numbers. Mine is 6015, but it comes in 6655. They probably released it a couple different times. And actually, when I was reading about the dress, they said it's Butterick's top selling pattern of all time. So they might have even reproduced it at this point, and that might have been the ones I've seen. A sarong dress. Those are always popular. Okay, Fraggle Rock. Interesting. And then this is different. Royal Flower Girl, Kate Middleton. Must have something to do with the style of dress at her wedding. John Kloss. Another older one. And then there was a name. There's some more of like the making history. Strawberry Shortcake for $40. Oh, what was the name of the designer? Betsy Johnson. I don't know if that's Butterick or if that's... where did I see it? More Fraggle Rock. That does pretty good. That's good to keep in mind. 1970s Kenzo. Caftans. Caftans always sell really well. No, I don't know where I saw it. But anyway, if it's Butterick or if it's McCall's, I can't remember. But Betsy Johnson, as a designer, those patterns are always very sought after. Here, oh, okay, here we go. I narrowed it out. Only 3 have sold. $77, $53, $25. Buy it now. That almost looks like a repro, but maybe it's just in really good shape. Okay, and then I decided to just do a quick search of the top selling advance sewing patterns. Again, advance is just going to be vintage things. So it's always going to be vintage styles. So a lot of these are really interesting. Okay, I don't find advance sells, but it doesn't always sells super fast for me. And these are top selling mail order. As you can see, a lot of people end up lotting them up, especially the kids patterns. This is neat. It's an apron mail order pattern, which is really exciting because that's one of the subjects that that woman, I think, collected. So I have a bunch of apron patterns and mail order apron patterns. So I have to take a better look at those. And this one sold for $67. Doll patterns. Okay. So these are mail orders. Yeah, a lot of the high priced ones are just people lotting them up together. Like an apron, $33. That's good to know. Okay, and last but not least is another pattern to keep an eye out for. It's back to Vogue again. It's something that I have sold. There's two versions. So it's the Dion von Furstenberg wrap dress, her famous wrap dress. There are a couple different Vogue patterns that are for that wrap dress. One sells higher than the other. So they have sold over $100 in the past. That could be coming down again as well, but still $80 for this. It's Vogue 1549. As you can see, it sold in a pretty good price for a while. This was a wrap jumpsuit. That's interesting. And then this, I think, is the one. Nope, that's still the same one. There's a couple different styles. Here's mine. Okay, this is the one I have sold in the past. So it's the Dion von Furstenberg. It's Vogue 1610. It's a wrap dress. It's just not, I guess, the iconic one. But I did sell mine for $60. So I think back when the main pattern was selling for over 100, like 120, then this one was selling for like 60. So now we've kind of just bumped down. The main one sells for 60, this one sells for 30-ish. Okay, and then, oh, that's awesome. The label that would be in one of these patterns, the label alone sold for $34. That's cool. Okay, so that is it for tonight. I don't even want to know how long this video is. Hopefully it's good for you guys, or you can watch it while you're working, or watch it while you're listening, or just watch it in stages. I appreciate everybody watching and subscribing and all that kind of thing. So like I said, there's more to talk about with sewing patterns, and there will be another video at some point about that. We do need to talk. We'll talk a little bit more about sourcing. We kind of talked about it today. But researching patterns, obviously searching eBay is a beginning, but sometimes there's a little bit more research that needs to be done. We'll talk about pricing, figuring out pricing, how to make the listing, what to put in it, then how I ship patterns, and then also how I store them while I'm waiting. Okay, so I will let you all go, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you're out sourcing and hitting some garage sales and finding some good things. And we'll talk to you probably on Tuesday with the next What Sold.